Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the Long Island Women in Tech webinar on crypto assets and career opportunities. This is actually an area I know very little about. So it's actually exciting to learn more about something myself. So I'm excited to hear from Michael Beller, a partner of CoVenture. Michael is our guest speaker, and we're going to get an opportunity today to ask him questions about crypto assets, cryptocurrency, the differences, what career opportunities are in the space, and what technology is in the space. Some of us might be very new to this subject, so we'll get the basics done in the beginning, and then some of us might be quite advanced, and I'm sure Michael is up for the task. So before I get started and introduce Michael, I just also wanted to quickly thank Jean Hannon for bringing Michael to the table, right? We always bring new people to our conference calls and our webinars, and Michael has even known Long Island Women in Tech for more than a few weeks. But Jean Hannon is one of our members, and she brought Michael to the table. She's one of his partners in another partnership. In any case, now that we've gone through the basics, I'm also going to just give you a quick overview of Long Island Women in Tech. Long Island Women in Tech is an organization, obviously, on Long Island. We have over 400 members now. I know that's crazy. There's 400 plus members. I can't keep up. It's great because we try to engage as many of our members as possible at all the times. There are 4 of us running this organization. It's myself with Shauna, Samantha, and Carrie. Samantha's actually in Plano, Texas now. She left us from Long Island, and now she's in Plano helping us run this organization. So just want to call out our directors for doing all the great work that they do. And we will be asking for volunteers because this year is our year of volunteering. We need more help to get this organization to excel to the next level. So I look forward to reaching out to all of you within the next few weeks. Okay, obviously what we do networking events, mentoring, education, career support. So we do one-on-ones to help people, coaching. We also do tons of community engagement, and this is a safe space. So we expect that any ideas, any questions, you're not going to be judged by asking. So please feel comfortable in this space. All right, now on to our guest of honor. Thank you, Michael Beller, for joining us. Michael is a startup investor, a VC partner, a former CXO and a consultant. He's been in this space for many years, spending time in New York City and San Francisco. I'll let him give me some more detail about who he is and what he does as we talk through our session today. So I'm really excited. Michael, thank you for joining.
My pleasure.
There you are. So guys, you'll see him. I'm going to stop presenting the screen so that we'll actually see all of us in a bigger screen. There we go. All right. So Mike, I think, some of the questions that we had first off is just some of the basics. I think that would really help. For me, I've had to read multiple articles just to get a grip on crypto assets. I am not in the financial space. So for me, a software developer kind of person, tell us a little bit about cryptocurrency and crypto assets. And, explain the difference, because that is something that I can't understand.
Sure, and thank you for having me today. So I'm not sure myself, to tell you the truth, the difference between cryptocurrency and a crypto asset. To me, they're the same. And I think maybe spending a couple minutes, everybody has sort of a different understanding of where this came about and maybe put it into perspective, because it's not just cryptocurrencies, crypto assets. I think combining that with the notion of what is blockchain, what are distributed apps, what are these sort of fiat protocols, sometimes they're referred to. I think all of these terms are being used sometimes interchangeably. And the essence of where this all started really 8-9 years ago in 2019 with the invention of Bitcoin, which was the first cryptocurrency, was if you actually go back 35 years or so, a bunch of computer scientists got together and they finally figured out how to share information between computers that were connected on a network. But there was always a fundamental problem in computer science of how do you exchange value between two computers. And there's some famous names for this problem, the Byzantine generals problem, and there's some other sort of variants of that in computer science. But it was always a fundamental problem that was never solved in computer science. That was the fundamental breakthrough in 2009. And if you think about everything that's happened over the last 10 or 20 years in terms of exchanging information, that led to Amazon and Google and Facebook, and because all of these businesses, whether it's in advertising or social media, is all based on exchanging information. And so now we have a way to exchange value, and that's opening up new applications. And one part of the fundamental solution and part of the breakthrough with the original Bitcoin, and there's now several thousand cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin just happens to be the first, was this notion of how do you provide incentive to people in a distributed autonomous environment to participate and share value and recognize. And that's where cryptocurrencies came about, because you needed a way to provide incentives to people in a network. And it's a little abstract, but in the world of cryptocurrencies, regardless of whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or many of the other cryptocurrencies, they're all based on an ecosystem of service providers, or sometimes you've heard of miners. Miners are, if you think of so let's go back to blockchain. Blockchain is a centralized database or a common ledger that everybody records information in. And it's using cryptography, which is where the crypto comes from in terms of cryptocurrencies. But you have a blockchain, you have a central database, a decentralized database where you're recording information. And a lot of that information is the exchange of things of value. And you have miners, which are individuals or companies that are validating the information that's going into the central database. And you need a way to reward them for their service. And so each ecosystem has its own currency, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, and that's where cryptocurrency comes about. And cryptocurrencies are both a way to reward the service providers that are providing services for a particular blockchain, and they're also available to trade and exchange. And that's what's led to kind of all this hype and euphoria. And anybody who follows the markets over the last 24 hours, a little bit of despair with some tremendous declines and corrections occurring now. So cryptocurrency and crypto assets are the coins and tokens and mechanism to reward people that provide services related to a blockchain, and they can also be a way for people to buy services that might be related to a particular application on a blockchain. And I know that all sounds very abstract, so
no, it's very academic. I like that. It gives us the basics that are really important. So I have two questions. One,
sure.
I want to get to your background a bit, because I want
Sure.
people to know, why do you know all about this? Where did you come from? Where did they come from? I also have a question on the things of value you talked about, because for us, things of value are like money, right? Mm-hmm. Money is of value. There's a value associated with it. So that abstract concept of things of value, or the thing, is one thing that's confusing to me, I guess you could say. So if we could start with that and then kind of drive into what you do.
Sure. So start with the value, or start with how I got into it?
Whichever works for you. I kind of threw a bunch at you at once, so I'm a terrible moderator.
Sure. No, that's fine. So I got into this, I think started to get more and more exposed to it in sort of 2012 and 2013, just from reading about it, bought a little Bitcoin, and started following the market. We got more. That was also about the same time where I joined a venture capital firm. And our venture capital firm has a unique model where we build software for startup companies in exchange for equity. And that venture capital firm grew to where we have our venture capital business. We also have a lending business. But what happened last year was we had a lot of existing investors that wanted to start investing in cryptocurrencies. And so we put together what now has become our third business line, and we just launched a few months ago our first cryptocurrency fund. So we manage, so now we have external investors and we manage their cryptocurrency investments in one of our funds, and we're launching a second fund in a few months. So I've been dabbling in terms of reading and learning about it since 2012, 2013, but really kind of immersed myself in the world of sort of cryptocurrencies and blockchain and distributed apps over the last 12 months. Yeah, and then currently I help run all the operations for our cryptocurrency fund and our other funds.
Well, you're
Mike,
pretty
this
embedded.
is Jean.
Hey, Jean.
Hi, I'm just really curious, what is the underlying technology behind blockchain and then the technology that the cryptocurrency builds on itself? I know I've heard blockchain, I've heard it's an app, but how did you kind of get familiar with the technology in order to be able to evaluate an investment?
So so the way I started to get involved with it, just lots and lots of reading. And I shouldn't say reading, podcasts, YouTube videos, talking to people, researching. So that's how I started just sort of getting acclimated and learning more about it. The underlying technology, that's one of the more fascinating things. I've read some of the white papers. Some of the white papers are incredibly academic and hard to get through. I used to hear stories. The original Bitcoin white paper, for example, is 8 pages, and it can literally take you a couple of weeks to get through it if you try to sort of understand the cryptography, and which, by the way, I don't fully understand. In terms of, from a software development standpoint, in terms of careers, you hear a lot about the each different cryptocurrency or each different sort of blockchain environment has its own technology, has its own ecosystem of developers. In fact, as from an investment standpoint, one of the key things you look for is which platforms and which environments have the most active developers. Right now, it's by far Ethereum, but a lot of the other protocols, and you'll hear me sort of flip back and forth with using different terminology myself. I actually like to use the word protocol to refer to these, because each cryptocurrency, each blockchain is in combination kind of represents its own set of rules and methods for recording information, exchanging value, rewarding their miners. And so to me, it's really sort of a collection that represents a protocol. And Stefana, you had asked back to sort of the exchange of money and value. So, and that's where sometimes the term cryptocurrency, I think, is confusing to people, because you immediately hear the word currency and you immediately make the association with money. And Bitcoin, which is by far the most popular and well-known cryptocurrency, its primary use case was intended and looks like possibly its only use will be for money in one form or another. And what's really interesting is the world of cryptocurrencies, you start thinking about, and we can talk about other uses and how blockchain and cryptocurrencies and these protocols will affect media and advertising and supply chain and manufacturing. And it'll have, my view is that it will impact every industry to the same degree that the second wave of internet technology has impacted industries. But when it comes to money, you can actually break it down into 3 or at least 2 components. Money is a store of value. money is a method to exchange or transfer value, and money is used as sort of a measure of value. And it turns out that Bitcoin, being the first cryptocurrency, it's also the most rudimentary when it comes to its technical capabilities. And so it's most likely right now a good, what people are referring to as a store of value, or the digital form of gold, where other cryptocurrencies like Litecoin or Monero or Zcash, which are three prominent cryptocurrencies, or Ripple, are better suited for some technical reasons for payment processing or exchanging of value. And Ripple has been in the news a lot for that reason.
So what other things of value have people used crypto assets or cryptocurrency for, other than, money?
Sure.
Yeah.
So one example, which is close to home, because we saw a company pitch, because now the other thing from a career development standpoint, or for those entrepreneurs in the audience, that are looking to raise money or create their own startups, years ago, every presentation included the notion of, we're cloud-based, or we're a SaaS-based product. Now we're...
Wait, there was a DevOps era,
Yeah.
and now, wait, if I put in, what is it, the ability to, you're saying if I throw Bitcoin in my name, somehow I will get funding. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not necessarily that you get funding, but the same way that for years, everybody, no one really says we're now cloud-based or we're a SaaS-based product anymore, because everything is. But for a while there, that was a buzzword.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to see a lot of presentations where, we're building a blockchain, or we're going to use this blockchain or this protocol or this cryptocurrency to support. So one good example is we had a founder who, he's a doctor, he's an entrepreneur, he lives in Phoenix. He pitched us an idea, and one of the fundamental problems in the medical community is, more so than some other industries, is the credentialing that takes place of different health professionals, and the employment records and education records and the credentials that kind of are associated with that person. And it's a very cumbersome problem for hospitals and medical providers to track and manage all of this. And there are some central organizations, but he has an idea where, if he created essentially a blockchain, and remember, a blockchain is just a distributed database where everybody can record information. So I could record, for example, my education history, my employment history, my credentials. And then you had different people participating to validate that information and give their stamp of approval. And let's say there's 5 different people or 6 different people that validated, Mike's information that's stored in the central database is correct. So it gets 5, what are referred to as 5 confirmations. And it's stored in a way where it's immutable, it can't be changed, and it's encrypted. And so now that's stored in this centralized or decentralized database, and you had maybe 5 random people that could be thought of as miners that validated that information. And now you might have hospitals that, when I go to apply for a job, they can go to that decentralized database and validate all of my information. So this is not an example of an exchange of value, but it's an example where we've recorded without a central so there's no central organization. There's no centralized company.
There's no company running it, right?
There's no right, exactly. It's a decentralized organization. And so where does cryptocurrency come in? So you need a mechanism for the hospitals to pay every time they retrieve, Mike's credentials.
Yeah.
So they might, pay 5 tokens. And you need another method to reward the 5 individuals that validated Mike's information, those service providers.
So it's
maybe,
people who are doing the work, really, because
correct,
usually if it was a centralized company, that would be paid. Now, let
correct.
me ask you, because those people, are they also hosting this decentralized database? You know, where does that reside?
So that's the notion of the miners. So the answer is no. There is no central copy of the database. And for those that are more technical, those copies, there's many copies of those databases, and they're called nodes. So you can right now on your computer, everybody on this call could literally download the entire copy of the Bitcoin database or the Ethereum database, and it's called installing a node. And some of them are getting big, multiple, many gigabytes, but they're not as big as you would think. And and many of you have probably heard about the miners, and you can install your own mining equipment. So they're just specialized computers. They're becoming more and more specialized, where 5 years ago it was you could just do it on your laptop. You can still do it on your laptop, but you just won't make as much money. So it's literally all of those people providing that service just might be running the node or the copy of the software of the protocol on their local computers. And
Wow,
that's
so it's
what,
not even in the cloud.
so it's not
I'm just
even in a
kidding.
cloud. There's no single centralized
Yeah.
copy. So that's why you also will hear the term decentralized apps or DApps,
Mhm.
as the way it's commonly referred to. So, and DApps from a careers opportunity perspective and from an industry perspective. So probably everybody on this call works in a variety of different industries, and there's probably examples in just about every industry where they could be using a sort of a decentralized app. And actually, there is another analogy. I don't know if everybody on the call, I assume they're somewhat technical given the name of the organization, there is a parallel, because we still refer to sort of public clouds like Amazon Web Services, but we sometimes also in the technology world refer to like private clouds.
Yeah.
So if an organization, or especially larger IT organizations, might implement their own internal kind of cloud or grid infrastructure, we're seeing that to a certain extent in the blockchain world. Like Walmart, for example, just last year, one of the more interesting applications, I think, in the supply chain world, they implemented a private blockchain that manages and monitors, I think it has to do with the supply of pork. So, anybody in the food industry or the pharmaceutical industry, the sort of the traceability of your product, if you trace it back from what's on the shelf all the way through the supply chain to the raw material that was grown on some farm, a big part of a variety of different compliance regulations and reporting regulations require that who touched it, who worked on it, what kind of factories, was it using slave labor, what was the source of the meat. And so actually using a blockchain is a good example of that, because you're storing information every step along the way. You require multiple people to sort of validate that information, and it's stored in a way that everybody can see it, and
Mhm.
it's immutable. So it's
Yeah.
this sort of definitive record. So supply chain traceability is one of the examples. And in that particular example, they did a private blockchain.
Wow. Okay.
That's
I didn't
that's
even think of food processing in
yeah.
that way, right? That's very interesting. I actually want to pause for a moment because we haven't taken questions from the audience. I'm sure people have questions. I do have one or two in the chat that have sent privately to me. Guys, feel free to send them publicly as well. So if you do have a question, you want to ask it verbally, please unmute your line. It's the bottom left of your screen. If you're full screen, it's at the top. I know it's very, very confusing because you're like, wait, we're in the bottom left. If you're viewing us in full screen, it's at the top. Unmute your line and ask the question. I'll just pause for a moment because I could fill a space with words. This is the Italian in me. All right, no questions, no one unmuting. So I'm going to ask the questions that came through chat. So this one person is asking, so what I'm missing out of this area is why cryptocurrency instead of just good old money? Maybe I'm too old school, but blockchain can be hacked, so why can't you just use money? Why are we deciding to go to cryptocurrency?
So let me clarify one thing. There's no record of a blockchain ever being hacked, by the way. So there's no known, as far as anybody knows, a blockchain has never been hacked. There's been lots of breaches of security and exchanges that have been hacked. But the actual integrity of the blockchain where the information is stored, no currency has been hacked. There's a whole separate discussion of how do you store your own cryptocurrencies and your cryptographic keys, and it's really very problematic, especially for our fund, where we're managing other people's money and the dollar amounts get large. So back to the question, so why do we have cryptocurrency instead of just money? So it's back to the notion that you have to have, if you're in the ecosystem with a blockchain and you want to exchange something of value to reward the people that are providing the services to that distributed app and allowing other people to use something of value or a token or a coin to procure those services, you can't use money in that environment because money requires a bank, or if you wanted to use US dollars, for example, you would need some sort of central organization to sort of clear that money. And that money is referred to as fiat money, F-I-A-T. Fiat money is money that's backed by a government. Cryptocurrencies are not backed by a government. So we refer to all the other types of currencies as fiat currencies. And so you can't simply use a fiat currency because there's no mechanism to exchange a fiat currency in a distributed environment just digitally.
There has to be a central bank in that area, in that model, right? There has to be an official bank for a fiat currency.
Yeah, there has to be some centralized processing. So even if you think of a simple transaction with money, if you go in and buy, a pack of gum at the local corner store, there's Visa or MasterCard. There's a merchant bank that gets involved. If you run your credit card, there's a merchant bank that is the acquiring bank. It will process it through Visa or MasterCard, which is, provides the interchange. There'll be the issuing bank, which for the card holder. There's lots of these centralized entities involved that facilitate the exchange of money, and it's incredibly expensive. And when I say incredibly expensive, the typical credit card transaction. So we're just focusing back on the use case of money. Money itself is, the average, even for a large merchant, it gets close to 2%. And for a small merchant, it's over 3%, which really inhibits our ability to pay. You can't really use a credit card to buy something worth $0.25, for example, because of the credit card fees. And so if you think of the future as what this is going to mean for like advertising and content creation and content consumption and reading articles and paying for an article, you want to read about the Super Bowl and you just want to read one article and you want to pay a nickel to read that article. There's no way to do that today. There's actually a bunch of companies working on that exact problem. So the whole notion of micropayments. So that's why we can't simply just use fiat currencies for all these things.
That makes sense. I actually never thought of it in that way. I have a question, but I also want to pause because I think somebody had a question online. Anyone have a question verbally? Okay, so the question from Tanima is in the chat is, can cryptocurrency be converted to money value? If so, how?
Yeah, so I'll rephrase the question to say, can a cryptocurrency be converted to a fiat currency in terms of the language and nomenclature? So that's where all the hype and euphoria and despair in the last 24 hours has come up, because that's where these exchanges have come up. So you might have heard of exchanges like and retail offerings like Coinbase. Just a side note, Coinbase now has more customers than Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade combined. But Coinbase, GDAX, Gemini, Bittrex, Poloniex, and Kraken. Those are just a handful of the exchanges. Those are the major exchanges in the US. So the answer is, can they be converted? The answer is yes. You go to one of these exchanges and you literally just log on to the exchange, and it looks a lot like your Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade or your Fidelity account. And you, just like you would use US dollars to buy a share of Amazon, you can use US dollars to buy, $100 of Bitcoin. And you can also, and it's referred to as trading pairs. There's what you can't do with stock is you can't use one share of Amazon to buy 10 shares of IBM. In the crypto world, you can. So you can actually use Bitcoin to buy Ethereum, and you can use Ethereum to buy Ripple. There is an interesting, while I'm on this topic, I tend to get long-winded, but one of the other examples that people think will just go away, it is a little crazy that if I own a share of Amazon, which is a good thing to own today, right? I can't sell it to Stefana, right?
Why not?
Yeah, there's absolutely no mechanism for me to sell you a share of Amazon, right?
Yes, that's true.
I have to sell it on one of these centralized exchanges. So people generally think that will go away, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to see a lot of disruption over the next 10 or 20 years in investment banking and other things, as it's referred to securitizing other assets. So this notion, my share of Amazon should just be recorded on a blockchain. And if I want to sell it to Stefana or Jean, we should just be able to enter into a transaction, and it'll be confirmed and it'll be recorded on the blockchain. And there's people working on this exact problem.
Like selling a car, right? I want to sell my car. I should be able to just transfer the title to you.
Absolutely. Same with real estate. And people are working on this in the real estate. The fact that we have title insurance in the real estate industry is absurd. Title insurance only exists because we haven't been able to track the ownership of who owned that real estate at what point in time. And so there's companies working on putting all of the real estate ownership records onto a blockchain. So it'll be immutable, publicly available, and referenceable. So those are some other examples of distributed applications that will leverage kind of that decentralized blockchain.
That's very interesting. And it's opened my mind to things that I wasn't, obviously when you look at cryptocurrency, you think money, and that's all I thought about as soon as it came to mind, right? And I read about it, and it was about Bitcoin, and they told me how I can make money on Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, I'm really not really feeling comfortable with this. I'm not going to do it. The funny thing is I didn't consider all these other applications for this decentralized blockchain, right? And that is amazing to me. So, guys, on the phone, there are at least 30 people here. I know you have questions, and it's not just Stefana asking it. Thank you, Tanima and Jillian, for asking questions in the chat. I appreciate that.
I have a question, Stefana.
Yes, Jean. Jean's on, wait, I want to pause here on the recording and say Jean is on a walking desk, and I want one. That's all I want to say, and then we'll let her talk.
It's a Nordic track, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I probably walk 5 hours a day because of it.
Amazing.
As you're talking, Mike, about different applications for blockchain, and also you're talking about microtransactions, and you're talking about that this is an asset unattached to government. So in the United States, if we believe we have a stable government, we can have confidence in using our currency, our fiat currency, as you'd say. If you're somewhere else, like in the third world, not so much. So do you see applications for blockchain that could become avenues for people to get money to where it's needed in the world, maybe more in a donation standpoint, maybe to places in Africa that don't have a stable government? So is there use cases being thought of around ending poverty or kind of spreading assets for medication and things that are needed like that?
So I'm doing a quick search. So the answer is yes, and it's one of the major things people are looking at. There's been so many initiatives over the last couple of years of how to help the unbanked and underbanked, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. And by making, money is really expensive to transfer. Anybody who's tried to do a wire transfer domestically, and you pay $17 or $25 to do a wire transfer, it's crazy. And to do an ACH transfer, for those that know, or your direct deposit for your paycheck, that takes anywhere from 1 to 3 days to clear. Yep. If you want to move money faster and use a wire transfer, it's $17 to $25 is the typical. And if you want to do either of those things internationally, it's even more expensive and can take a full day. So back to Jean's question, in terms of transferring money between countries, between individuals, that is one of the big use cases, but it's also one of the biggest problems right now from a regulatory standpoint. And getting money to people in third world countries, or I'll just say the unbanked and underbanked in general in terms of supporting micropayments. The problem is this is where governments are feeling threatened, and some governments more than others. Japan, for example, is really taking the leadership. They're kind of all in on supporting cryptocurrencies. The US, everything so far from the SEC and the central bank and the Reserve Bank have all been fairly favorable to cryptocurrencies, and but there are other countries like China and Russia and Korea that are very fearful of this could be a way for people to get money out of the country and also avoid taxes. So in the US, we have pretty good guidance from the IRS on how to treat this. It's cumbersome, and it's treated as a capital asset, which means every time you buy or sell something, it's a taxable event. But I think we'll see that change in coming years. But so that was a long-winded answer to yes, this is a huge use case. It's also a source of fear for certain governments. I was doing a search because the most interesting aspect of this is if you see countries that have real inflation problems and other problems, they're thinking about cryptocurrency differently. So Venezuela just announced over the past couple of weeks, and I just pulled it up on my other screen, they are gonna come up with their own cryptocurrency. It's going to be called the Petro, and we could see this could be the start of seeing an entire country moving to a cryptocurrency as their currency of record for the country.
Wow, that's a big move. I would imagine, yeah. I couldn't imagine how that would work if they ever came to the US and needed to pay for something. That's where I get confused, right? And I think that's kind of where a lot of us, because we're really associating it with fiat money, right? Because that's what we use today.
So so what I say to people of that is, I think the notion that people have of fiat money, I actually think they're far more similar than they are different. The amount of money that's transacted in the United States in the form of cash is almost negligible. If you just think of your own monthly expenses and your daily expenses, whether you pay your mortgage or how you get paid your paycheck, it's all being transferred digitally. No one's sending you a stack of $10 bills. And so why is
well, that sounds good.
That's good. Okay, 8:30, please.
Sorry.
That's right. So I actually think that it tends to be more abstract, so people have a hard time getting their head around it. But if you
Yeah.
sort of step back a second and say, well, wait a minute, I just paid for my lunch using a credit card. I never even saw the money. It just moved it from my, and by the way, I pay for my credit card bill every month because it's on an automatic withdrawal. So I used my credit card to just pay for lunch. I never saw the money. The money was deposited electronically from my employer. At the end of the month, the credit card company is withdrawing that money from my bank account automatically, and somehow it's getting into the merchant's account. I never really see it. It's really not that different from digital currency to begin with. And I think it's just we have this somewhat outdated view that you can still print out, a dollar bill. But the truth is you can still print out cryptocurrency because every cryptocurrency has a unique identifier, which is the cryptographic key, your private key.
Mike, the truth is when you look in my wallet, there is no real currency in here.
Exactly.
Every time I go outside and I need to buy something, I am going, oh my gosh, I don't have $10.
Right. So we use our phone. So we use a credit card or we use the Apple Pay or something else.
Yeah.
But, on my phone, I can also just open my Coinbase wallet or my Jax wallet. There's other applications that store my cryptocurrency. So when I go to a restaurant, and there's more and more that are popping up, I can go to checkout and I can show them my phone and they scan my barcode. And it's really no different than using a credit card. And the credit card withdraws this digital money that we call US dollars from my bank account. And if I use this other application, it withdraws Bitcoin from my Bitcoin wallet. So I actually think the similarities are more than people give it credit for. And in terms of money, the use case of money.
I never looked at it that way, but that's really helpful. It clarified it for me. Thank you. I do want to drive a little bit more into, because we only have about 13 minutes left. I wanted to drive into a little bit on the job side of things, the careers in this space, because a lot of our women in tech want to know, where should they be studying to get into this space, right? Or, are there classes? Are there things that people are focused on now, even if it's not that they're going to create their own VC-funded startup? Maybe they're just looking to go and work for a startup in this space. What are you seeing in that space?
Yeah, there's, and actually Jean had asked me to have some things to talk about this too. So I have some links. I'll post them in the chat in a second. From a career development standpoint, I have a bunch of links. I don't have them ready to go. I think one of them might be Block Geeks, because I'm a software developer also, or an aspiring software developer. I used to be a software developer, and I wish I did more software development today. So I've really been wanting to just sort of play around and develop. I think it's called Block Geeks.
There's also the crypto.jobs. I was Googling it as well to try to figure out what was going on in this space. I see a lot of front-end developers, back-end developers, marketing people. So really like pretty much the full gamut of tech, from marketing all the way down to full stack development. Yeah.
So, I'm a big believer. Mark Andreessen, a famous VC, he said, software is eating the world. And that he said this many years ago, and we'll see software driven applications impact every industry. I think we can also say that blockchain is now going to eat the world, because we will see blockchain based distributed applications impacting every industry. So from a career perspective, I think just learning, thinking about it, thinking about your individual companies and businesses and functions, in the company, I think you'll start to generate ideas. And so I think within each organization, you'll see, you can, from a career development standpoint, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to become kind of the leader within your own organizations in terms of understanding blockchain and how it can impact your business. And by the way, my daughter, I give her the same advice, female in tech, and she's kind of taken this, and she's sort of becoming in her company kind of the leading advocate for how blockchain can impact the company in unbelievable ways, and in ways that you just can't even think of. And she's sort of spearheading this kind of discussion. And just in the past 6 months, she's got like every business owner asking her for meetings. Mm-hmm. And she's not a software developer. She does not have a technical background, but she's sort of just immersed herself in kind of understanding how this may impact the business. Mm-hmm. And now it's kind of propelled her to become kind of the go-to person when people have questions. And it's the people that are contacting her are the people that are the head of the different products in the company. And she's at Facebook. So this is, transforming her career and her role just because she just became more knowledgeable than other people just by reading. So from a career perspective, I think it creates a great opportunity for everybody to help their companies just think about this. Because just like you said, in terms of referencing, you hadn't thought of things this way, or you tended just to think of it as money. You didn't think about the supply chain aspects or how it's going to change advertising or content creation. Steam, by the way, Steam is STEM is a website that I think is going to change because it's using a blockchain to basically promote how people create content and blog posts. Because there's so much discussion now around fake news. How can you create a distributed application where the news and articles and content is on a blockchain and requires a variety of people for confirmation? And so you can validate the content before it's distributed and then reward the people for doing that. And I think we'll see more and more media, especially, a lot of the social media using that as a way to combat fake news.
It's funny because everyone balked at it when Facebook said we're going to get the audience to confirm fake news or not, right? But it's kind of funny when you put it in the blockchain sense, you're going, these are valid validators, right? These are people who went through the process of validation.
You're right. And then of course you need some sort of currency because you need a way to reward people, rather than just having everybody hit a like button. You need to provide the right incentive. But then there's the other side is then how do you change, and I'm not saying Facebook's doing this, but there are other examples like Steam, where if you create an ecosystem where people are contributing the validation of the content that's being created, then are there other people then are using micropayments to consume that content and read that article?
That's interesting. Wow. Well, we have another question. So tell us a little bit more about your daughter, because Jean tells me that you have some amazing children, by the way. Not that we're trying to talk about kids, but I do know that she has won some interesting awards lately, and I think it's important to mention it.
Oh, my daughter. Well, thank you, Jean. No. So I mentioned my daughter because sort of female in tech, and she's in VC, and there's a lot of discussion and sort of negative news around females in VC and sort of breaking into that industry and females in tech. So, she's kind of carved out her own role and don't know what to say. Yeah. So, I'm obviously proud of my children as we all are. So she's, so my daughter started as a female, she actually started in venture capital right out of college, which was a little unusual. And then she had an opportunity to then go to one of their portfolio companies, which is Medium. For those that know Medium or read blog posts on Medium, and it was started by Ev Williams, the founder of Twitter. So she got to work with Ev Williams and at Medium and sort of think through their business model. And then she left there to go to Facebook, where she works on the corporate development team. And then in that capacity, she sort of carved out this role of kind of spearheading a lot of the discussion around blockchain and distributed apps and how it can impact the different products within within Facebook, across Facebook Messenger and all the, all the products that Facebook has.
It's really interesting, her progression in tech, right? Because we talk about this a lot in Long Island Women in Tech. The progression in tech usually doesn't start in tech for women, right? It usually starts in finance or, in marketing, or we've got some women who were, physical therapists before they decided to jump into tech because they started a project. So it's interesting to me to see how well she's done. And she didn't have that tech background. It was just putting her mind to a trend she saw idea in, right? Innovative tech trend. And I think that's really important for us all to think about when we're thinking of our careers.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add this as well. I don't know if it's necessarily unique to my daughter.
She's just one example. I like that example. That's what I mean.
But what I was going to say is she's, so she circulates on teams where she's the least technical person, and she doesn't have the technical or software engineering background, but where she's found a way to add value, which turns out from a company perspective is arguably as much or more value, is she sort of herds all the cats. And so as it relates to blockchain, there's obviously lots of phenomenal engineers at Facebook, and there's lots of tremendous thinking and strategists around each product. And so what she's sort of, she hasn't learned more than anybody else, but she's learned enough and has put herself in a position to sort of facilitate all the conversations. And she's learned enough to be, have comments on, some of the technical aspects and debate the merits of Ethereum versus Bitcoin. But it's not necessarily thoughts that she came up with on her own, right? Very few of us have original thoughts. We learn from reading and talking to other people. So she's developed kind of her role in the tech community to sort of be able to curate and collate, information from others and facilitate those discussions. And so, if that's a model for others to kind of leverage, I think it's kind of an interesting model. We sort of, each of us sort of has to find our own path, and what we're good at. That's the way she sort of has kind of carved out her role and kind of created her own niche.
That's great. I really commend her for it. We only have about 3 more minutes. I want to, before we end, answer the one question that was in the queue that we didn't answer from Joe Kelly. Joe asks, why do non-monetary currencies like Ethereum sell for money? Going back to what we were talking about a little earlier, just get that question completed. Why do they sell for money?
So when you say non-monetary currencies, I would say, so why do all of the cryptocurrencies have the ability to sort of convert them into other things, including fiat currencies like US dollars? And because you need that mechanism. So if you're a service provider or a miner and you're providing, you're mining Ethereum or you're mining Monero or Bitcoin, you need a mechanism. If you just collected Ethereum, it doesn't help you pay the electric bills, is the bottom line, or at least not yet. And so you still need a way to convert that into your fiat currency of choice. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the exchanges exist. And for us in the United States, there's really only 2 prominent exchanges that allow us to convert. Oh, it's not true anymore. But I was going to say the 2 prominent ones. One is Coinbase and one is Gemini. Gemini is the company that was started by the Winklevoss brothers. And Coinbase has a really nice retail interface. But Robinhood, I hesitated because Robinhood just announced, for those of you that use Robinhood on your phone to buy stocks, Robinhood just announced last week, I think it was, that you can buy cryptocurrencies. I think it's still on a wait list basis right now, but we'll see more and more companies that allow you to convert. But anyway, the answer to Joe's question was because anybody, especially the miners, you need a way to sort of convert the rewards that you're getting by providing that service like mining to the ecosystem back into something that's usable in the non-cryptocurrency world.
That makes sense to me. I get that. Joe, if there's any further question, absolutely chime in. I really appreciate your time today, Mike. I know we're right at the top of the hour, and thank you for spending this hour with us and getting us to understand the basics, but also really giving us the full gamut of this industry. It's definitely opened my mind to it. Now I don't feel like a blockchain idiot, to be honest, but we'll start there. Now when Jean talks to me, I'll be able to converse in a more educated fashion. So I do really appreciate the time today. And thank you for spending your time with Long Island Women in Tech and helping us get to this stage of learning.
Super. Well, thank you everybody for having me. If any follow-up questions, feel free to ping me. And I'm not good about accepting LinkedIn invites, so I'm just warning everybody. I tend to look at it once a year, but I think you have my email or contact information.
Yes, I'll make sure that our team has access to get in touch with you. And if we can't, we'll find Jean and we'll say, Jean, we need to get him back on the phone.
Yeah, no, it would be my pleasure. So thank you for having me today.
No problem. I'm going to just quickly share my screen and present our last two slides, guys. The one thing I want to recommend for everyone who's on this call today, first of all, thank you all for joining. We have a really good attendance on this one. If you liked what you saw today, join Long Island Women in Tech. It is a free network. You can go to liwomenintech.com and join us. We send out maybe 1 or 2 emails a month just telling you about events that are either local to Long Island or webinars that you can join. I do recommend joining in so that you get the messages right to your inbox. Outside of that, I want to again thank Mike and thank Jean for putting this call together. And I put our Twitter accounts out there in case you want to follow us on Twitter as well and see what's going on in the industry. Oh, thank you everyone for joining today. It was really eye-opening for me, and I hope you found the same. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.